Welcome back to DMT episode 2, Deep Meaningful Talks from the Kingdom of Paineel Embassy here in Portugal. We're really excited about today's talk. We're going to be covering a topic that is very close to our hearts and our vision and our mission, and it's to do with cultural cohesion and manifesting really what type of reality that we want to go into. In the panel today, same as last week, we've got Benjamin Pinheiro.
Greetings.
And Royal Akbal Zizi Pinheiro, and myself, Agua Akbal Zizi Pinheiro. So, where do we kick this off from? Cultural cohesion.
Let's go backwards to go forwards. So let's start at where we came from. So, Paineel Foundation in the beginning, pre-Kingdom of Paineel, what it looked like, how it was, to present, to where we're going next.
Wow, I like that. So, well, maybe before we go that, we can even go even further back. Maybe dive deeper into the magic of what we're doing, and then work into grounding what it is. So one thing that really struck me on my journey that I've held on to is this idea that we create our own reality, through our thoughts, our words, our perceptions. What we focus on becomes our reality. So we've heard all these talks, the secret, as they say. So it's very clear, especially now, that there is a war for people's attention online. There's so many stories, there's so many narratives, there's so many channels, there's so many gurus now. Everyone's a philosopher, everyone has an opinion, everyone has a reality, and there's this war for people's minds and people's perceptions. And that's become very apparent, especially in the age of technology. So when you put those two things together, the idea that we, the people on earth, men, women, living people, we create the reality with our attention. If you can control the attention span of someone or the narratives of someone's imagination, you can then control the reality that is manifested from those people's thoughts, especially if you do it in large groups. So for us, at least, this is why we've separated ourselves from the matrix, right? Because we've decided we want to have full control over what we are manifesting and really focus our intention on the reality that we want to manifest, right? Which brings it back to the grounding aspect of the Kingdom of Paineel, where we were and where we're going. So we can talk maybe about some of those techniques or some of those skills of how to manifest your future, like symbols and signs and spells and sigils, location. Maybe you can cover some of those grounds. You guys want to add to that?
Yeah, I think one thing that's become very clear is that there is an eternal truth. There's an eternal blueprint that has been here since the very beginning of all matter, of all universes. There is a blueprint that is fundamental in how we as evolved beings live. And whenever we try to escape the reality of that truth, that's when there's turmoil. But when we are able to live within that blueprint of truth and cohesion, that's when things run smoothly and we feel there's less friction or there's less resistance. So even when we speak of culture, there's I like to quote the Vedic structures because it is very scientific, and there's one thing called the Sanatan Dharma, which is essentially the eternal truth. So whether someone has a differing way of wording it or not, they're speaking the exact same thing. That's the Sanatan Dharma. It's like it's always come back to the same focal point. So I think with culture, one thing you see is when cultures have one single focal point that they're focusing on, then you see it come to fruition. Like we speak of many times, you know, you go to certain countries, everyone's dressed similar at least. They're eating similar things. Their spiritual practices are similar. And that's what manifests the nation at large. So I think that's the same for us, is we're learning to cut out the distractions that are around us and start to focus on a central point. And this is what we're refining, right? Because we've all come from different cultural backgrounds here. But we're starting to refine and say, cool, we're all going to focus on this and put our attention into it. And now we're seeing it manifest over time. But yeah, I totally agree. I see the war on attention, we'll call it. The war is less physical, it's more mental. The war on attention and to take the energy of living beings is very clear to see, especially the fact that we've actually been pulled into it. It's very easy to get sucked in. You know, you go online, before you know it, you're just almost in a trance, right?
Absolutely.
And I came across something which is essentially the what's behind social media is an entity that's being fed. So every time we're scrolling, essentially our energy is being fed into an entity. It's like an energy grid. And when it really clicked for me is if you look at your phone battery, for as long as you're on the phone, the battery's dying, right? And then you plug it in to charge it again. That's actual energy, physically energy, right? So where's that energy going? It's going into something. Every time you touch the screen, there's an electronic pulse that runs through your finger. So you're actually feeding your living energy into this device, right? That for me was a big grounding of that. But yeah, I definitely agree, you know, it's what lies behind great cultures and cohesion is having a central focal point, which if you put it into today's language is manifestation or the secret, like you said.
Having a purpose.
Yeah, having everyone's focused on something. So if you look at a religion, let's say Christianity, they put Jesus at the center, right? So everybody is focused at this central point. So everything they do in their life is based off of referencing that central point, right? So you look at Islam, they'll all quote Muhammad or Allah. That's it. So Muhammad and Allah are at the central point of every decision that's made, every action, the way they wash, the way they pray. It's all that there's a focal point. And when you see great nations or great societies, or they have a central point.
And it's interesting because you find the countries that are the most successful in that matrix terms are the ones that have very strong central points.
Yes.
For instance, the UK, the royal family. You think UK, you think royal family. The Queen. You think the Union Jack, which has been flown all over the world. You recognize it instantly. You think things like football or sports, iconic things. So there are things that zone your mind straight away into that, and that feeds that entity or that energy and cultivates the power of that nation, so to speak.
Correct.
Wow, that's deep. That's deep. It's also interesting because I was just thinking as you were speaking, before we had devices that filtered or stole our thoughts, families or cultures or tribes would have story time. They would sit around a fire and they would share stories, or what they call dream time in some cultures, where they would share their dreams and their ideas and their stories. And by doing that, they were feeding that back into the village. So essentially the fire was kind of like the device, I suppose, where you'd speak into the fire. And fire is obviously a transmutational, is the most powerful transmutational element. You transmute things with fire. So they would speak around the fire to the fire. The fire would send that information up into the ethers, and it would amplify whatever they were sharing within that village or within that structure. Then it reminded me as well of how a lot of cultures were never allowed to talk about bad things. So I remember I was watching Apocalypto Now the other day, Mel Gibson's Apocalypto Now, and it's about a tribe. For those of you who've watched a tribe in South America, and they get invaded. Basically, these Spanish conquistadors are about to invade the South American tribe, and they've never had exposure to these people. So one of the young men sees them first on the shore, and he comes back and he tells the elder, I've seen these people and they've got these guns and they've got, and the elder says, shh, don't say anything to anyone. Because if you talk about this, this is going to become our reality. So I believe what you're saying, but don't talk about it. You'll spread the fear, and once everyone starts talking about it, it will come into our village. So I thought that was really deep, that little monologue, and there was some depth to that. But it's interesting, yeah. Story time and dream time and the things that we tell each other and speak about is really, really important. And now we've got these devices that filter our thoughts. So most people don't have original thought anymore because all your thoughts are programmed because of the scrolling. That's the entity that's stealing your essence. So yeah, by being in a space, and I'm guilty for it. I scroll from time to time, but I always have a central focal point, like you're saying. Whatever I'm doing, I always come back and I'm in the Kingdom of Paineel. I look around, people are dressed in kaftans. We've got our signs and symbols hanging everywhere. Our music is often playing in places around the land. There's always something to bring me back, to bring all my energy back and my thought frame into what we're creating, co-creating. Yeah. Wow. It's powerful stuff. So where do we go? I mean, like, even on a deeper level, like things like reincarnation. Something else that really dawned on me a few weeks ago, a few semanas ago, I shared with you guys, where I thought to myself, worst case scenario, just thinking ahead and planning ahead, I thought to myself, when I transcend, for me at least, there's one of two things that could happen. One is I transcend and my soul, the being within me, goes into another realm or another dimension that I'm unaware of. And that's what I call ascension, right? Or if I've not done enough work and there's still work for me, I'm going to have to reincarnate back into this realm. And I thought to myself, well, it's more than likely, because my subconscious is now filled with the Kingdom of Paineel, there's nowhere else for me to reincarnate other than what we're creating now. So it's kind of like what we're creating is also for myself, my future selves, and every version of myself. I started thinking, well, if I had to reincarnate as a future into the Kingdom of Paineel, what kind of family would I want to be in? What kind of culture would I want to be around? What kind of men and women? What kind of adults? What kind of role models would I want to be around? And that's a culture. And that changed the whole game for me, the whole perception, because it made it more personal. It was now like, wow, I could be a baby one day here. So everything I'm doing is really important because I will end up, having to deal with whatever I've created for myself. So I think that's really powerful responsibility.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I see, like I said, the eternal truth is that, at least from my perspective, if your focal point can be the original creator, some say God or Allah, whatever label is, then that's when you can't go wrong. Because if your focal point is that, then you'll always realign back with what the eternal truth is, the eternal game plan. So therefore, everything you do will end up in righteousness because you put your interpretation of God at the center of it. So like I said, all cultures that do this, you see they're very successful. If you look at many Islamic, especially Islamic countries, you see that people have a certain level of culture, a certain level of respect, a certain level of wealth. There's not so much degradation of peoples. It's because they have certain structures, because they put their spiritual practice at the center of every decision they make, whether that's business, whether that's society. And I think, again, it's like copying, pasting that philosophy that you put the spiritual side of things or the godly side of things at the center, everything else then falls into place. So this is what I'm really coming back to, is that it's like whenever I look or research history and you see when nations fall, it's because they come away from their righteousness. They come away from the traditions or customs of spiritual practice, and they move into something different. You look at, for example, great civilizations, what they call the Egyptians, which were the Kemetics, right? they went from worshipping nature to worshipping idols. And then there's scriptures that show us, you know, not to worship idols, etc. But the moment they switched into that, it fell, you know. But before that, they were worshipping the nature, you know. They were looking, rather than worshipping a statue, for example, they might take a mirror and water, or look at the sun, and you know. So yeah, this is what's really been solidified in my mind, is put that at the center, your interpretation that resonates with you as the eternal being or the eternal personality or eternal, and then put that at the center of all the decisions you make. And then therefore, when you do reincarnate, if that's the path, then you're going to reincarnate into something that is going to take you closer to home. And just to give context of what I mean by that as well, is we've all come from this central source, right? There's one central source that everything comes from, all life. So however that resonates to you, what that looks like, if that becomes your focal point, what you're doing is you're going back to where you came from. So if you've fallen from grace and you've fallen down into this physical body that has all these desires and thoughts and stuff you have to process, if we're talking about ascending, where are we ascending to, and where does that end? So if you put your focal point at the end goal, which is going back home, as far as I'm concerned, then there's a saying, it's like, what's the saying? Essentially, aim at the stars. Worst case, you're
fall on the clouds.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So set your goals so far, which is going back to eternal source. That worst case, you're gonna at least reincarnate into a better situation. You know. So
wow, yeah, that's beautiful. It's in philosophy they call that idealism. So what you might describe as God, like even when I'm hearing you speak, is we should always refer to God as an ideal rather than a subject or a place. Does that make sense? So cultures that do really well are the ones that have an ideology, they have an aspiration, they have a purpose, like you said, right? Rather than an objective. So an objective is, you know, once I have this, I've reached God. Once I have 1 million, I've reached God status. Or once I have this possession, or once I've satisfied this set of criterias, then I've met God. Because once you've done that, then you've limited that space of creativity and expansion, which for me, that's what God is. God is all about expansion, creativity. It's all about nurturing. It's about destruction as well. It's a cycle of birth and living and death. But that is a ever-growing process, and it's an expansive process. There's no end to that. There's so many versions of birth, and so many versions of living, and so many versions of death, and then rebirth again. So yeah, so just going back to like objective truths and subjective truths, you know, there's some truths that are objective, and that's what I would say are godly truths. So you have an objective truth. The objective truth is what you might call science. Water has certain properties and does certain things. It doesn't matter what you say, what you believe, how much you pray, water will always do certain things that it does. Solid structures will always do. So those are objective truths that cannot be changed. And then you've got subjective truths, which are where you can color in your own colors into those borders. And this is where the world is going crazy at the moment, because objective truth and subjective truth is now becoming mixed. You know, an objective truth is a man has certain body parts that make him a man. That's an objective truth. And now that objective truth is being made a subjective truth, where it's like, well, actually, we're now going to say it's not a man, even though there's objective things you can see that make that thing that thing. So this is why there's so much craziness in the world, and why we've now lost our godliness. This is why we've lost God, because we're now losing sight on what's objectively true and mixing it with our own subjective thoughts that are not based on that fundamental basis. So coming back to what we're doing here at Paineel, this is what we call like natural law and universal laws. You come back to natural law, they're just things that are natural, meaning that they're constructed that way without man's input, right? Whatever we've not had any influence on, and that's how it is, that is a godly objective truth. And we must keep that intact. what we can do, where individualism comes in, is we can decorate those objective truths, right? So we can put our own colors in there, our own different versions of that, but that truth must always be as it is. Yeah, so this is really interesting, especially now as we're beginning to form our own culture here at Pineal. It's becoming so apparent how important having cultural truth is really important. Cultural framework, cultural structures, because it keeps the reality intact. It keeps the godliness in what we're doing. It keeps things pure, and keeps things grounded, which is something else maybe we're going to dissect into today, spiritual bypassing. You know, so this is a topic that I've really been diving down into, spiritual bypassing, because it's very easy when we become spiritual to get so lost in finding the truth that we start to override objective physical truths with spiritual ideals that don't have an objective basis. You know, so for myself, a big one was when I had my awakening. For a long time I identified it as a soul. We're talking about identity these days. Identify as this. So I identify as a soul. So I used to get triggered. People say, well, you're a black man. I was like, I'm not black. I'm a soul. I'm not any color. I'm not from Africa. I'm just a soul. I'm not even a man. I'm a soul in a man's body. I'm just a soul. So yeah, and it was good because it's part of the transition. But now when I look back, I realized it was a lot of spiritual bypassing, and I wasn't actually dealing with the objective truth of what reality I'm in now. You know, and now that I've grounded this, I realized, okay, now that I'm grounded, a lot of the things I was struggling with, even in my spiritual space, and I was fighting and battling, was because I hadn't reconciled my physical self with my spiritual self. And there was a war happening inside of me, my spirit and my physical. So I had to ground my spirit back into my physical body and have to relearn and reprogram and understand what I am objectively, this object that I am, what codes it has, what memories it has, what functions it has. There's a reason why I incarnated into this particular body, into this particular place and time. And really honoring God is really honoring those objective truths, embodying them, and then spiritualizing them, which is what I call the path to ascension.
I have a quick question, rewind slightly. If someone were watching this, what's our focal point at Pineal? Because we've mentioned what it is for Muslims, what it is for Christians. What if someone was watching this, what would it be for Pineal?
I would say sovereignty, autonomy. So to some, sovereignty just means, like I say before, you know, it's like being free to not pay a fine, or being free to not pay tax. But when you look at sovereignty in its nature, the definition is a king or queen or ruler of a state, right? And then when you go into the depths of sovereignty, all of it is based off of the spiritual law. So the moment you dive into sovereignty in its true form, you're already separating the body and the soul. So already it's godly. So I'd say sovereignty really is at the center, and the cohesion of living peoples is at the center. So it's sovereign individuals coming together as a collective. And that's why I was saying, like, in terms of the objective truths and subjective truths, we're saying that we all recognize that there is a divine force or an original creator. How you color that in is your freedom to do so, so long as it's not causing harm to anyone else. But we celebrate everyone's way of celebrating the eternal source. So I'd say really sovereignty is where it seems to be that we're really pushing forward, especially as we transition into the time of Aquarius, which is the air, right? Because we've come out of the earth, we've come out of the waters, which is the maritime law. We're now going into a different law, which is the air. So now we're going into law of spirit. That's why the war is on the mind, the information, right? So we're now going into that space where it's becoming clearer and clearer that regardless of how you practice your spiritual practice, you must have something in place where you are, again, coming back into the truest nature of this object of the body and what it means and how spiritual this body actually is. So we're learning that if you plant into the earth, it will give you abundance. And if you eat what you've planted with good intention, you're going to receive that good intention back, right? So we're essentially going backwards to become a village in essence. You know, we're stripping everything down, and as we strip everything down, we're getting closer to the rawest nature of the divine creator. And through that process of sovereignty, by stripping everything down and starting again, we're getting closer and closer to that eternal source. And then everyone's finding what's really within them and their best practices. And that's why now we're moving into, you know, tribes within tribes, because those tribes will have a blueprint of how they want to ascend. Because I think we all want to ascend here. But some might be wanting to ascend all the way to the end. Some are thinking about their next life. Some are thinking about going to the next realm. Some are thinking about just maintaining. You know, everyone's in a different, but the focal point is still the same, which is living within the laws of nature. And by doing that, there's no way to lose.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I would go back to what Ja was saying to answer your question. For me, it's nature. I think nature, for me, is my God. If you do what's natural, then you're doing what's godly. So our principles, our ideals here, and that's what sovereignty is summed up. It's coming back to the natural way of doing things and then being responsible for those spaces. You know, so responsibility and doing things the most natural way you possibly can. And the third aspect of it would be creativity. So I think like how we worship what we call the creator or God or source also changes with the season of our consciousness as well, how we express that. So God doesn't change, but how we express the godliness will change with where we're at. So for instance, right now in the world is going through a process of resetting, a destructive phase where the old is being destroyed and something new must then be created. So they're going to be, for me, God is an acronym for two things. G is the generator, O is ordinance, or that which creates order, and D is the destructive force, right? So right now, God is in full force. God is destroying everything that is old. There's a lot of destruction happening, destroying ideologies, destroying perceptions, destroying old ages, going from one age into another. So there's a lot of destruction happening, even death, even in the physical world. There's wars at the moment. There's coronavirus. People are dying. So there's this death, the D part of God that is actively at force right now. And then there's the G part as well, on the other side of the scale, which is generative, which is generating new life. So there's new systems coming in, new financial systems, new nations that are going to be birthed, new cultures, new everything. There's a new generation of everything that is coming in. And then there's the O part, which is the ordinance, that which must keep the balance between the destruction and the creation. So here at Paineel, I feel like we really embody that G and O force, especially the G force. For me, that's my focal point. I love being creative. The music that we make, you know, we try and be as original as we can. The clothes that we make, that we're wearing, we say we're not going to copy any. We're going to do our own. We're going to create a new something. Our manifesto, our flags, our symbols, even our names, new family name, new royal name. So we've created everything from scratch. You know, and this is what God loves doing in this space. God wants to give us that breath of creation and give us that inspiration to say, right, go forth and create what's new in times of destruction. So I feel like we've answered that call. You know, everything's been destroyed. God has breathed that force of energy to say, those of you with the will and the force and are ready to create, go forth and create. And I think Paineel is at the forefront of that creation, that creative space. There are a lot of people who are in the O space, a lot of spiritual people who will say things like, we don't need to create a new, let's just sing, the kumbayas we call them. Let's sing, let's go off grid, let's just grow food, let's not worry too much about creating anything, let's just have high vibes and praise God. That's the O force of God, and that's great. So that's the middle part that just wants to sustain and hold balance. And then you've got the destructive people, even in the spiritual realm, who are very spiritual, but they want to face the system. We're going to make them hang. We want to find all these evil people who, let's go to this building, let's protest. That's the destructive force. Who are these evil people? The vaccines, let's expose this, let's make videos. That's the D force that is in destructive mode with the Spirit of God. So it's really beautiful to observe. But for us, I think creation is a big one for us. Creating what's to come. Birthing, seeding things. Hence our family name Pinheiro, which is the pine tree, which they say was the first tree to grow in this realm, was a pine tree. So we've called ourselves the Pinheiro royal family because we are the seeds of something new that is to come. So everything that we're doing is really just a blueprint of that. And going back to go forward, once you go on this journey, you start to realize that a lot of the things we kind of knew that our ancestors did, we're now redubbing and doing it now. Albeit in a slightly different way, but the objective codes are the same.
It's a fractal.
It's a fractal
of the eternal truth.
That's it.
So that's what I'm saying. What's collapsing is everything that didn't follow the eternal truth. But we are following the eternal truth, but creating a newer version that coincides with what's happening now.
Yes.
So no one's done what we're doing now,
yes,
but they have a fractal that's very similar that we can refer to in the past.
Yes.
So our ancestor did what we're doing now, but slightly different because it was perfect for that time.
That's right.
If you look, maybe let's say it's 20,000 years ago, the scripture they were reading was for them at that time. The scripture we're creating is for people in this time and who's going to come next.
Yes.
So like we said, as we reincarnate, we'll read the scriptures we wrote for ourselves.
Yes.
So that it all makes sense of how we're meant to be living.
Wow.
To pass on the eternal truth. So we don't get lost in the he, she, theys, all this kind of stuff.
Yes. Yeah. So it's interesting. So I'd ask a question, say, do you think that if we could have a chronological view of different resets in different times where what's happening now is reflected in the past, we'd be able to see people who are sitting doing what we're doing now.
Yeah.
I think so.
It's exactly the same thing, but just a different version.
Yeah. That camera would have been a scribe.
Yeah, wow.
It would have gone onto a scroll.
Yes.
There would have been someone painting the people in the room.
Yes.
At different stages.
Yeah.
When the conversation was like high.
Yeah.
When the conversation was more meditative.
Yeah.
And then those things would have been wrapped up and then they would have been taken.
Yes.
And then they would have been displayed and read out.
Yes,
and
story
gone
time.
from town to town and town to town.
Yes.
And then at some point it would have been compromised.
Yes.
So it would have had to have gone underground. Then you have like the Freemasons or the secret societies. So essentially the knowledge that we're now speaking of, that which has been influenced or is coming back to us, is only because those seeds are still there. That's still there for us.
Yes.
So our ancestors made sure that we still at least got enough of the message to re-spark the internal the internal information.
And this makes sense, and this is why you can only be a creative force when you have complete love. This now makes sense, right? Because you can't be creative if you don't have love in your heart, because you won't see the truth that is hidden in the lies.
Yeah.
So for instance, now when I read anything, even occult, I read Aleister Crowley, and I'm not in fear. I'm not, he was a Satanist. I'm reading with complete love and acceptance and saying, let me just read it for what it is. And then often when you read it, you're like, actually, I don't know why everyone thinks he was a crazy Satanist. What he's saying kind of makes sense if you have the right discernment, right? So a lot of these truths have been hidden. The Freemasons, the Illuminati, there's all this fear around it. And that fear has been put in place to cover the truths that are objectively underneath the foundation of those societies.
Exactly, which is the olden times fact checker.
That's right.
So you got a fact checker, which is meant to tell you if something is a fact.
Yes,
but the fact checker is telling you a lie.
Yes, that's right.
So you have to decipher what is actually the truth.
Yes.
Even though there's a something which is actually put in place to make sure we're told the truth.
Yes,
But
yes.
it's not telling you the truth.
That's right.
So you have to
filtering.
discern with love what's actually true.
Yeah.
So that's why I see, like, now, for example, this video at some point might not be in the internet, right?
Yes.
But it will still be able to be found somewhere.
That's
somehow.
true. Yeah.
It will be, whether it's on the blockchain, whether it's
Yes.
Dark web.
somewhere,
Yes.
someone's gonna have this.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and that's all we can do is just keep creating.
That's right.
And there'll be a force that tries to get rid of it, because it will, you know, I think that's what the good and evil really is the truth and the lie. You know, they say the devil is a liar, right?
Yes.
So the devil is seeing this information is going to help to
Yes.
keep the truth going, but the devil will try and smother it or remove it. You know?
Yeah.
But it's our job to just keep creating. Creation can never be stopped. You know,
Yes.
energy never dies. It only transmutes into other things.
That's right. Yeah, this reminds me of one of my favorite bedtime stories that I often read to the boys, and it's the story about the truth and the lie. And the story goes, one day there was truth and lie, and they were walking down in a forest, and lie said to truth, "Why don't we go for a swim?" You know, and truth said, "Yeah, no worries. Let's do it. Why not?" He says, "I know a lake somewhere down the road." So they walk through the forest, they get to this lake, and they say, "Let's strip all our clothes off. Let's dive into the water. Let's race to the other side of the lake and back and see who wins the race." So Truth is like, "Yeah, great. I'm up for a race." So they take their clothes off, and they both dive into the water, and they start swimming. Halfway through the swim, Lie stops and swims back to the bank where the clothes are. He gets to the bank, he puts on Truth's clothes, and he walks back into the city. Lie swims to the other side, gets there and realizes, oh, there's no Truth here. Truth is disappeared. I'm going to have to swim back and get my clothes and find out what's happened to him. He swims back to the clothes and finds his clothes are not there. And all he sees is a pile of Lie's clothes. And he decides, well, I can either go back to the city naked, or I'm going to have to wear Lie's clothes. So the Truth decides, no, I'm not going to wear Lie's clothes because I have to be pure. I'm the Truth. I'm going to have to walk naked. So he goes back to the city, and up to today, the Truth is walking around. The naked Truth is walking around, and no one can see it because it's naked. And the Lie is walking around dressed as Truth, and everyone thinks that Lie is Truth. And this is what's happened to the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, that story really encompasses what we're saying. The shadows that have filtered what the truth is, and we no longer have. We had lost. We're now rediscovering. We had lost the eyes to see and the heart to feel what the truth is. The naked truth has always been there. Big one being the Earth. The flat Earth movement. It's like when you realize and you're like, how did I even believe that I was spinning and I was upside? I don't understand. The naked truth was so obvious, Yeah. And there's more of these, obviously, that you start to realize during your journey of the naked truth.
Yeah. And that the truth itself, because sometimes the truth is raw, right?
Yes.
So the truth can make you smile, it can make you cry, it can hurt you, it can make you feel, but fundamentally when the truth is there, then you get closer to nature. You get closer to the reality, you get closer to that source.
Yes.
Lies can make you feel good, but there's always a residual after effect. And that's what the looping of, I would say, is reincarnation, etc. is based off of coming away from the truth.
Yes.
But sometimes, like I said, when someone says something that's true, it might scorch you a bit, but there's always a healing that happens afterwards.
Right. Yeah.
So I really feel like this system that we're in now, as the technology grows, the technology is based off of dopamine or a feel-good factor. So each time someone posts a picture or a video and there's a like, it's designed to release dopamine. So people are now putting out content, doesn't matter whether it's truth or not, as long as it gets a response and it's getting that dopamine, then it's giving, So the more we come away from the dopamine or the instant gratification, the closer we get to the truth. Because real happiness comes not from instant gratification, it comes from putting long-term work in.
That's right.
And that's what sovereignty really is as well.
Absolutely.
There's no short rewards. There's no
No.
quick rewards in sovereignty.
That's
It
it.
takes a lot of stripping back and getting to the truth. And
Yeah.
through the truth, you start to deprogram everything that you thought was the truth.
Yes.
And that in itself is
Well, you just explained that we have been the lie dressed as the truth. All of us in this realm have been living a lie, right? So now what happens is when the truth hits you, that feeling of shame and guilt is a piece of clothing that is the lie has been
being
taken
stripped
off.
off.
You're being
Yeah.
stripped off. All the clothes of lies are being stripped off. So that shadow work is you taking off your clothes until your naked self is revealed.
vulnerable.
And you're
Yeah.
vulnerable and you're like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
You know, and then you can start putting on the cloaks of truth, the clothes of truth. And that's when you can go into that creative space where you've lost all, not lost, but you no longer, what's the word? You no longer do things to please other people. You do things from your heart. You do things because it's right. You do things because it's your truth. And you no longer worry about what people think, because that's the naked lie, what people think, right? The dopamine you're talking about. Instant gratification. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So to really like ground it and how it works in the community, at least, the meetings.
Yes,
That's a big one.
yes,
right?
yes.
We've all got to a point now where we've been able to sense over time when someone's not being in truth,
Yes,
and we've been able to sense when things get heated that we're actually speaking the truth.
that's right.
But when we speak the truth, so much elevates.
Yes,
But when there's lingering things that are under the surface,
Yes.
we can all feel it. You know?
yes, yes.
So that's a big part. Communication. It's in your song. Communication is unification,
Mm.
right? But communication in truth is the only thing that actually accelerates.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Wow, wow,
Yeah.
wow.
Some
And
of the best meetings we've had have been
The most intense.
the most intense, where we've really spoken truth, and there's been true happiness afterwards. If you remember, we're all vibing really high.
Yeah, straight
Yeah.
away.
As
Yeah, the
compared
quick,
to-
quiet meetings are.
Yeah, the ones where afterwards we're kind of still, because we
Yeah.
know there's the elephant still in the room,
Yeah.
and we haven't really spoken about the truth. But the ones where we've given it to each other,
That's
afterwards we're vibing very high.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so it's very true.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, yeah. It's also interesting because you said something about focal points and uniform, and you know, it's like a weird space as well between sovereignty, autonomy, and unification. Because what is source? Source always wants to return to itself, right? It always wants things to be unified and come as one and then go into itself. At the same time, source also wants to be expressive and individual and its own. So this is something that we've faced as a community. I know we've had people who've been in the community when we started saying, guys, we all need to dress a certain way. Let's find our own dress code. And so many people felt as if, oh, this is now taking away my sovereignty. I don't want to look like everybody. I want to be individual. I want to wear what I want and how I want to wear it. So it was like, well, yes, we have to be unique, but we have to have some sort of uniformity, some sort of oneness, something that binds us together. And then within that binding force, we can have our own individual style. So even now, we're all dressed in hemp and kaftans, but our designs are totally different. You know, the colors might be the same, the material is the same, but how you cut the shapes, where you put the colors, how long, how short, designs that you want to put up, that's all up to you. But there has to be a objective focal truth. And the objective focal truth with our clothes is, as long as it's hemp, in fact, that's it really. As long as it's hemp, then you're good. And if you can put purple into that, because that's our national color, even better. So outside of that, you can do what you want. You can dress what you want in your own hemp clothes. So I think when a culture has those fundamental foundations or blueprints, that is the foundation of any society and culture. There must be a foundation. And then through that, you have the creativity to dance around those creative forces. Same thing with family dynamics. We're talking about family dynamics at the moment. You know, we're very open. You know, we asked the question a few months ago, what kind of families do we want to culture into our culture? So we had someone who's homosexual here. We have people who are open to things like polygamy. People are open to things like monogamy, obviously. So there are all these ideas, and really the God force or the creative force is one that doesn't restrict the ideas, But those ideas must have a foundation that is cohesive and creative. So we're open. We say you can do whatever you want, start whatever family dynamic you are, as long as it follows these natural principles. And if it follows these natural principles, do what they wilt. Do no harm to others and all these things. So as long as we have those things in place, then that's what will set us free. Then we don't have the what is it called? We don't have the restrictive or the restriction to expand and to grow towards source, because source always wants to expand but also unify at the same time. And it can be quite a confusing paradigm, because you're trying to expand out but do it whilst you're unifying at the same time. Yeah.
Feminine and masculine.
Feminine and masculine. Yes. Yes. Yeah, because the feminine wants to unify and the masculine wants to expand. Yeah. And that's the contraction and expansion. Yeah. Wow.
I have another question, because most cultures have like a hero. Because we were talking about inspiration, people to look up to. What would ours be? Is that us, ourselves?
Ourselves.
Yeah. I would say that those legacies are now
What we're
being created
seeing,
now.
yeah.
So like from my perspective, I'm seeing that the more I do and the less I speak, the more others will speak of me. So the more others speak of me and what I do, the better it is than me speaking about what I do. So if there's hundreds of people speaking about what I'm doing, naturally that will create a legacy or heroic status.
Yes.
And for every man that's in line with nature and that expansive capability, that's all we seek, is to leave something beyond ourselves, a legacy, And that legacy really comes in family as well. You know, so it's like, what does your family represent? We all know families that we're, because it's funny, we talk about like Facebook, social media. I came across, when it comes up with the suggested friends that you may know, someone came up from when I was in school, so I haven't seen them for 15 years at least, but their family was renowned. Just for like, if one of them got into any problems, all of them were there, it's that kind of, and I remember reading the name and something just immediately came into me, like, wow, I remember them. And like they didn't really do anything special, but they just had a presence,
energy,
like
presence.
It's them.
Unity, like,
they had a solid unity.
Yeah,
You knew it's like you'd always think twice of how you approach or speak or whatever with them, because you knew that there's and I really see that it's like, now we're in this space where everything is resetting. There's going to be new heroes, there's going to be new everything coming up, right? So what do I have to do now for others to speak of me in the best possible way, so that it becomes that kind of legacy? And then when my futures, my sons and daughters come through, my nieces and nephews, when they know that they're part of a family that has a certain they have to behave in a certain way also, but at least they have that backing to know that, cool, I'm cut from this cloth.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the biggest goals for a man who's in his expansive capabilities, is leaving more than he is now, and that's the space I'm in right now, is let the actions do the talking. Come back into that source code, like I've said. The more we're in source code, the more naturally that's just going to happen. You don't have to force, you just have to go with the energy force, which is the eternal. It has the most energy. So when you tap into that infinite source, then everything is possible. There's nothing is impossible when you're in that space.
Yes. Yeah, for me it's very similar. I think we're maybe slightly different for me, but it's probably the same actually. A lot of the things that I do, I love to put out information. So the videos I make, I love writing information that's going out. But I always look at it as if I had to reincarnate and come back into this realm, I would want to be able to watch my videos. And if I didn't know that was me, whatever I'm saying now, I'd want it to impact me to be a better version, to be the best version in that lifetime. That makes sense. So I almost see myself as my own hero. Like if I incarnate as a future next year or the year after, in 10 years time, and I'm watching Agua Pinero's videos, I want to be watching and saying, this person that's saying these things is keeping me straight and narrow. You know, the things that they're saying are the way that I want to live and the way that I want to be doing things to be as righteous as possible. So that's like my compass to always guide my possible future selves. So bring it back to self makes it very real for me. So it's not like anything outside of me. It's like, this is me. I'm going to have to deal with this. So there are times where I'm looking for videos. I'm looking for something, but there's nothing that's really giving me what I'm looking for. I'm like, I've got to create it for myself because my next lifetime, if I don't do it, I'm going to be back here going, where is that person who can tell me what I need to hear and show me the way? So we've got to do it. And we're in that space now where we're doing that for ourselves, which will then ripple to other people as well. So yeah, so we're the heroes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's the time, like Jar said, it's the time now for those heroes to now be created. As the old heroes are being destroyed, you know, you see Christianity is now disintegrating. The truth of what Jesus is, oh, he wasn't a real man, it's an allegory, it's vexing people, you know. Religions are now slowly, the truth of religion is now coming out. It's not being seen as literal anymore. It's now being seen in its allegorical forms. And even if it is literal, Jesus is not now being seen as a literal son of God that was born out of a literal virgin, you know, who didn't, you know, there might be truth that there was a Jesus, but he probably did have a father and a mother, and he was, you know, conceived naturally. There wasn't, you know, an immaculate conception. So now that these things are being destroyed, not destroyed, but the clothes of lies are being taken off and the truth is revealing itself. New truths are now going to be surfacing, new heroes. But it's the same heroes of old because it's always the same story, right? So when you look at Jesus, it's Horus, it's Krishna, it's Mithra, it's the same lineage, it's the same person. Buddha, it's all the same story. They just change little bits here and there. The colors are different, the shapes are different, the languages are different, but the objective truth, it's the same hero. And I think it's going to be the same with us because what we're doing now, when it's stripped down, we could be embodying the same objective truth.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
The eternal truth.
The eternal truth.
Yeah.
So one day they might be going, oh, there was a deity called Jah, and Jah, you know, sacrificed his life, and then he was born after 3 days. But maybe they're talking about the ceremony where you change your name from your old straw man into Jah, and then it's immortalized into a story that you know that fits that narrative. And then one day they'll be saying, oh, it's the same person, Jesus, Jah, Buddha, you know, it's the same person, just different contexts. You know, yeah. So the story never changes, just the scenes.
Yeah, nothing new under the sun.
Nothing new under the sun. Yeah. And I feel that sometimes, and I'm not trying to be egotistical, but there are times where I do feel like Jesus. I'm like, now I know how Jesus felt, you know, when I feel when I'm in my what am I going to call it, when I'm in my vulnerable spaces sometimes, and I'm feeling a little bit of pity for myself. What's it called? Self-pity. And I'm like, I'm just trying to help people, and people are projecting on me. People think I'm this, and people think I'm bad. But all I'm trying to do is help people. That's what I just want to help people. I just want to make the world a better place. But I feel like I'm being persecuted. And then it crosses my mind, wow, this is like the story of Jesus. He literally was trying to help people, and they crucified him and hung him. So I'm like, wow, I feel what that's like. And it's like, wow, that's what that story is telling. That we are all Jesuses in our own ways, if we see it that way, in our own spaces. So not to say I'm saying I am Jesus. I'm saying everyone can relate to that, where you've tried to help people, and then the same people you're helping have betrayed you or crucified you. And you're like, I don't understand why you're doing this to me. I'm only trying to help you. So yeah, it's the same story that we all playing out. And then just the larger the scale you do it on, the more you embody those objective energies of the hero. And then obviously the more amplified the energy or the impression or the imprint of your being becomes a legacy, so to speak. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they say, the bigger the light, the bigger the shadow, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. If it was easy, everyone would do it.
Oh,
That's
everyone
right.
was doing it, yep.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that's why it's called the hero's journey as well. It's not for the faint-hearted.
Mm.
You know, the more light you shine, like you're saying, the bigger the shadow, and that shadow is the shadow that, well, the light, you're blinding people, so people are going to be blinded and they're going to be very angry with you because you're revealing the truth. People don't like when too much truth comes to at once. It's blinding,
Yeah.
and then the shadow that you're casting is your own shadow. You're gonna have to deal with your own shadow. So every time you look back, it's like, oh, what is this? It's dark. So you're dealing with blinding people who are then projecting at you, and every time you try and walk back, there's a shadow behind you, so you can't go backwards. So you're in this place where you're like, I'm blinding people, but I can't go back because of the shadow behind me.
Mm.
And then that's the shadow work, right? You just have to face those shadows and just keep going, really, and deal with the projections and the mirrors that come back at you. And then the more you do that with acceptance and awareness and all of this, that's when you're setting your soul free, truly. At least in my opinion. You don't take things personally anymore. Yeah. What a time to be alive, right?
Yeah.
What a time.
Yeah.
Finally alive.
Finally.
Yeah.
20-something years I've not been alive.
I know.
Probably.
Been running on programs.
Yeah.
I was
On
thinking today, I was meditating today, and I was thinking to myself, I remember a few years ago at home having a joint and just sitting outside and thinking, imagine if the whole world collapsed. Like, imagine if everything just revealed itself and the financial systems collapsed and, you know, the economic systems, the political systems. Imagine if the whole world just went crazy. What would that be like? I remember daydreaming about that and thinking, yeah, but that will never happen. This will just keep going on forever. But what if it did? What would that look like? And I was thinking to myself, wow, it's happening.
Yeah.
It's actually happening.
Yeah.
You know? And at the time it seemed like it was impossible because things were so normal for such a long time. The thought of the financial system, the world financial system collapsing was just unfathomable. Like, you know, what does that even, I can't even comprehend what that looks like. The thought of, you know, political systems being revealed for what they are was just unfathomable because it was just such a concrete lie, let's call it that, that was just so ingrained. It seemed indestructible. Whereas now, you know, most people don't subscribe to any of these things that were once concrete truths. Whether it's medicine, politics, economics, all of those things are really disintegrating, even in the minds of people who are firm believers in those things.
And it's collapsing now because it's come away from the truth. So the money's called fiat, which means fake.
Yes.
Which means it's a lie. So that's why it's collapsing.
Yes.
But when we go back to the fundamental principles, the natural principles, then it can't. So whatever our ancestors were doing, trading, we're now going to be doing again.
Yes.
So you can try to come away from the truth, but it will always snap you back.
That's right.
That's why you say the expansive and the
contraction.
yeah, that's it. Like we've expanded out into
too far.
Yeah. You know? Yeah.
Yeah, we have to contract back again before we can expand again.
And this is the beauty of actually becoming alive, right? So this is what separates us from animals.
Yes.
So animals, they have a certain routine. They eat, they sleep, they mate, and they defend their area. That's an animal. Yeah, which essentially is our most carnal sense. But the ability to transcend that and have a higher level of thinking, to be able to perceive what could be coming next and be able to perceive this original creator, that's when you go into being actually alive. That's why I say, when I say sovereignty is realizing that you're not just eating, sleeping, mating, defending, working on that cycle, right? You've snapped out that program. You're now creating, you're thinking from a higher level. You now said, okay, cool. I do like to eat and sleep and mate, etc. But now I'm perceiving lifetimes ahead of myself. Cool. So now we're in a different layer, right? So now we're going back to what we were doing before: trading, bartering, growing, all this kind of stuff. We're now in a higher level of consciousness
Yes.
because we've come back into nature again.
Yes.
So as we come away from the animalistic, we actually are giving ourselves that chance to step back into being a superhero, which is supernatural,
Yes.
essentially.
Wow,
Yeah.
this is amazing. Wow, what you've just said, because wow, this is really good. Because it's almost like our physical selves have to contract, yeah, but our spiritual selves are expanding at the same time. So because of what's happening in the physical world, our animal nature has to go back to its original factory settings. So things like sleeping, mating, defending your area, these things are now realities now. We're now in a space where you've got to be alert with what's happening around you in the physical space. Yeah, there's danger now, the depopulation, so we need to make sure that we have healthy futures, we're creating futures, we have family dynamics, that culture, that sort of thing. So that's very primal, those things. Food, we have to grow food, guys. We have to go back and put our hands in the ground and become primal again. But at the same time, our consciousness is expanding beyond that, and we're having deeper perceptions of what it is to be a human at the same time. So the contraction and expansion is happening within us, you know, extreme contraction and extreme expansion, and we're having to and this is what may be creating the craziness in a lot of us that are having to find our centers, because it's two totally different paradigms that we have to somehow learn to merge together. So there's a side of me that's like, I've got the man, I've got responsibilities. I've got a partner, I've got futures, they've got to eat food, they've got to be housed. I've got to make sure that the family is safe from any danger that might come in. There are these, you know, all kinds of things. So as a man, I've got to have a certain carnal space that I've got to be in. And at the same time, my spiritual self has got to be able to perceive things beyond the carnal space and plan, you know, lifetimes ahead, and understand what source is and what God is beyond the physical. It's
but that's the age we're in.
Yes.
So when you look at the prophecies and going through the ages, you know, they say the golden, the silver, the bronze, etc. So the age that we've been in, which they call Kali Yuga, is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. It's the age where the evil and the good are actually embodied in one. So like we say, we talk about shadow selves and our light selves, right? In the higher ages, good and evil are actually totally separate. So good is with good and evil is with evil, but they don't actually mingle together. We've come from a space where good and evil are actually within the same being. So we're now going into that space saying, this is what the beast is, right? The devil, the 666 is the flesh, right? We're now realizing we have the beast, but we're taming the beast with our higher level of perception. So we're saying we have a beast, the man, the thing that has the urge to eat, that has the urge to have sex, that has the urge to do these things. But we're going into our higher perspective and creating, I wouldn't say cages, but boundaries for the beast. And then we're coming back to the beast.
Taming the beast.
Yeah, we're taming the beast. And going back to the truth. So we're taming the beast so it can't lie or mistruth or come away from the real nature.
Spiritually bypass.
Yeah, we can't spiritually bypass the truth of what the beast is. But we're taming the beast so that it becomes a better beast until we transcend the beast. And then we can go back into that. A higher taste.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. And that's how you set your soul free, really, by taming the beast first. Otherwise you can't transcend.
No.
You've got to learn to tame it first.
You have to face it.
And that's a big one for spiritual people, because we have this awakening and what we want to do is escape. I just want to go back to source. I'm going to go to Eden. I'm done with this life, and then but at the same time you're dealing with a lot of emotions, carnal things. You've got anger, you've got lust, you've got jealousy, you've got all these things that are beastly within you, and you're trying to mask them with spirituality, or you're trying to escape from them and hide from them as if they're not there. No, it's not there. No. And then they usually come out in other toxic ways, but then again we mask it with spiritual things. You say, oh no, I'm doing it because this is where narcissistic behavior can come out. So yeah, but once you accept, like you're saying, the beast within yourself, then yeah, it can't hide anymore. The devil only wins when it's in its shadows, when it's hiding. The moment you reveal yourself and you say, okay, this is the beast in me, but rather than you controlling the soul, I'm now going to control you. And I'm going to still use my beastly nature because I'm in a beastly body, but I'm going to do it with higher purpose.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to do it in an expansive way. I'm going to do it in a creative way rather than a destructive way. You know?
I agree. And like you say, what you call matrinity, or others call polygamy, or extended families, this is a perfect example.
Yes.
Knowing you're a beast,
Yes.
I'm a man,
Yes.
I have multiple seeds, and I
Yes.
can create many.
That's right.
Many babies, many beings. But I'm going to do it in the most responsible way, which is with the feminine side, which is
That's right.
the unification, right?
Yes.
So I could just expand,
Yes.
but that would be beastly
Yes.
because it'd be without responsibility or structure.
That's right.
So now there's a structure from a higher perspective, like, okay, I'm going to have an extended family, many babies, big family, but I'm going to do it in this way with these codes.
Yes.
And it's going to help to keep the unification.
That's right.
And that's what's going to allow the truth to remain.
That's right.
Because the truth goes in all of those babies,
Yes.
and they're then spreading the truth.
That's right.
So actually, it's for the godly, the godly focal point.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and that's how we're taming the beast.
Yes.
Is setting structures for it so that it can be enhanced to its highest possible.
Yes.
It gives back in the highest possible way.
That's right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's true. It's truth. That's truth. Yeah, and something else that also leads to what you're saying is this analogy. I've heard it spoken of a few times, but every time it comes back, it really hits me hard. And it's the analogy of conscious perception and how you can tell how far wide your perceptive vision is. So for instance, an animal only thinks moment to moment, only plans for the moment, right? It's only planning for the here and now. I'm eating grass here, or I'm eating this animal here. It doesn't think anything beyond that, this moment. And then if danger comes in that moment, the danger is there. It reacts to the danger. Within 5 minutes, when the danger is gone, it almost forgets that there was danger 5 minutes ago. It's back to being. So animals do this. Futures do that quite a lot as well. You know, young futures babies. A baby will fall down, scream, and, you know, it's the end of the world. And then 10 minutes later, they're laughing like nothing happened. You know, they're in a different realm. So they live really moment to moment, which means that their conscious perception is only limited to this. This is how their consciousness operates. And then you have people who have a slightly wider net of conscious perception, and they will live for the weekend, right? And they will say, and these are the people you find, let's say, in the Matrix, and you will say to them, what's your plan? And the answer is, this weekend I'm going to that party. This weekend I'm doing this. This weekend I'm doing that. I'm going to play golf. This weekend I've got a football game. So their conscious perception is only as far as the weekend. That's as far as they can. Anything outside of that starts to become headache and starts to become, it stresses me out when I think anything beyond that. Let's just see what happens after the weekend. Then you have the next group of people whose conscious perception is the end of the month. When I get paid at the end of the month, I can finally buy this, I can do this, I can do that because I've got money. So people who will live by the month, but that's their conscious perception. Anything outside of that, they might not be able to fathom, maybe because they're limited by money. That's their consciousness is limited by money. So I can only be happy if I have money, and I have money when I get paid at the end of the month. That's their cap. Then you have the next round of people whose conscious perception is that holiday once a year. So I'm going to work hard, save, and I look forward to that holiday when I get my bonus at the end of the year, take the family out, we go on an all-inclusive holiday resort, I'm playing golf for 7 days, on the best golf, whatever it is. And that's what they live for. They live for their holidays, And then you get the next one who might be planning maybe for retirement. They will say, right, so my conscious perception takes me as far as my retirement. So I'm working really hard so that I can retire. Once I retire, I don't have bills. My house is paid for. My futures have gone to university. I don't have any, I can just relax. I can be on holiday every day. So for the next 20, 30 years, this is where my conscious perception is. And that's all I'm focused on. That's my focal point. That's my God, is that retirement. And then you have the next round of people, which is the very small, minute, the elites who see beyond all of that. Most people, 99% of people, cannot see beyond retirement. They can't see beyond death. Because after retirement, I'm going to die. And I can't even consciously perceive anything beyond that. Yeah. So it ends there. The elites, what we call the elites, are people who have been illuminated, who see beyond that, who realize that no, it doesn't end with death. You know, this avatar might end, but my soul will have to relive something else in another reality. And when you're in those realms of perception, this is when you are really a player character. You're no longer an NPC. You're now planning in terms of infinity and not in terms of finite structures or limited spaces, you know? And this is where it really becomes, the game of life becomes exciting when you become a player character. So like now we're saying, in my mind, I'm already planning my next lifetime. I already know that if I reincarnate, I'm reincarnating in the Kingdom of Paineel, you know? And there are times I even think in the Kingdom of Paineel, who would I want as my parents? You know, would I want Jah as my parents? Yeah, I think I want, if I come back as Jah's future, I'll be good, I'll be looked at, you know, so I'm already thinking about, and by doing that, I'm creating that reality already for myself. I'm planning that just as you would plan a holiday or your weekend and what you're going to do on the weekend. When you have that level of perception, you are really now in
Your head.
yeah, you're really playing at the highest level of what your spirit can allow you to experience. And it's a beautiful space to be in. And this is what motivates me with the Kingdom of Paineel more than anything else now, is this idea that I'm doing something that is beyond this lifetime. You know, I'm going to benefit from it in this lifetime, and I already am, but I'm going to benefit from it for generations to come, you know, whether it's through my seeds, my futures, or through my own individual incarnations as a soul. It's just a win-win scenario, win-win situation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
She's trying to get out of here.
It makes you wonder, even like our futures that have just come in, like they've manifested being here. Who are they?
Yeah, they came,
And picked us as
Yeah.
guardians.
Yeah.
We put a lot of conscious intent. I'm sure you guys did as well.
Yeah.
Like it was really, really specific, like
Yes.
the energy that we're manifesting.
Yes.
It's said as well, like the moment of conception is what you're calling out for. So at whatever state of being you're in
Yes.
is what you're pulling in at that time. So if you're like, for people who are, say, like under the influence, or that's what they're pulling in from the soul. So the soul that ended its life in that way
of course.
then that's what you're pulling in.
Yeah.
So the souls that have come now would have come, like Yala, for example.
Yes.
That's why she's so observant and meditative a lot of the time, because throughout the whole pregnancy, even conception, she was in meditation.
Yes.
You know, so whatever ether is coming in, she's going to be whatever your energy was
in that space.
in that
makes
time.
sense. Yeah.
That's what's being called forth.
Yes. Wow. Do you think that sometimes as well, like reincarnation, there are different streams of reincarnation? So for instance, a soul can reincarnate either as a direct descendant of your family line, or sometimes it can be a soul that has recognized a signature pattern, which is what you're saying, a signature pattern that is in resonance with what it had cultured in its life, for instance.
Yeah.
So I see, like, if you conceive a future, and let's say you're saying you're in meditation and you're doing certain things, there's somebody in the world who was doing that work already. They were in a meditative state, and then when they passed on and they were ready to reincarnate, that energy signature of what you were harnessing and culturing was matching with what they had, with their karma. And it only made sense for them to then embody that.
Yeah. So what resonated the most is that you can only reincarnate within your blood lineage until you've reached a level of consciousness.
That's right.
And then you can decide.
Yes.
So, for example, what we always have to remember is we've all been mixed up. So there's cousins you don't even know about that come from the same lineage hundreds of years back, and they're your blood relatives, but you don't actually know them like that.
Yes.
So I think on a soul level, you're still connected.
Yes.
So I think that it might not be your uncle or your auntie,
Yes.
but it might be your distant cousin that has one drop of blood the same,
Yes.
that you can reincarnate back into.
That's tricky territory, because if you go far back enough, we're all related.
We're all from the same.
So that's every human being on earth.
It's
Technically,
true, it's true.
yeah.
It's true.
You go far back enough, we all came from the one same.
Yeah, it's true.
So we're all related, really.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah,
but like you said, with the conscious perception, I think souls have also a conscious perception.
Yes.
So I feel that there's always hierarchy and levels, right?
Yep.
So I think certain souls, if they haven't yet accomplished enough, they can only reincarnate within a certain
That's
bandwidth.
right.
Yeah. So if you want to reincarnate into a pious family, which is like a spiritually uplifted, wealthy family,
Yes.
you have to have been
Expanded your
promoted
consciousness.
to that
I
point.
agree.
Yeah, to
You
match
can't
that
you can't have
resonance.
been
I
like a new soul, completely carnal, and then the
Eating
next life
meat,
you're in a pious family.
Yeah.
It doesn't
No,
work like
it
that.
doesn't.
Yeah,
It
you have to
doesn't.
you have to get your
Match.
grades up. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it's true.
So that's what I feel is what has resonated is that you can only go within a certain bandwidth,
Yes.
which I think has to do with your bloodline.
Yes.
But once you reach a certain thing, you can then say, I'm done with this. I'm now going to choose
Yes.
to expand into a different.
Yes.
And I think that also comes with merging of families as well. So obviously there's the father line and the mother line. So when for example Leela and we came into union, that's two very different bloodlines that have come into together, right? So therefore it's expanded the ability of reincarnation for our bloodlines, because we've crossed over.
Yes.
So now they can come through and then they can start to merge maybe with the mother line, and start to reincarnate with the mother line instead of the father line.
Wow. Do you think that there's also maybe like hey. Do you think there's also something to be said about sometimes maybe there are exceptions with souls where maybe a soul passes on, but for whatever reasons they've got to come back, but there's got to be an exception for that soul, especially during certain times. So for instance, I look back at my family lineage and I think to myself, in my entire family, I'm the only person who's in the space that I'm in now, who's experienced this, who's had this awakening, so to speak. And it's like, well, why me? Why am I the only one who's had this experience? I feel like I can't relate to my relations anymore. I don't feel like that same connection. We're not in the same bandwidth. So do you think that's like an exception, that certain souls sometimes will either choose or be sent to a certain bandwidth, even though their consciousness might be larger than that bandwidth, but there's maybe lessons they need to learn for them to be able to break out of that?
It's possible. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. I also think that sometimes we're here to put an end to our family lineage's ignorance to
break
the eternal truth.
Yeah.
So when our families get to a
ties.
point where they're coming off of their eternal truth, or going within the guidelines of source, then a soul comes to end it.
Yes.
And then put that bloodline back on track.
Yes. Wow, that's interesting. So do you think that maybe this is kind of the 144 thing, that within every family tree, so to speak, or bloodline, there's always going to be one person, especially during this time of reset, that has to reset the karmic.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
Isn't it taking it?
No?
This is
Oh, come on.
what's the point of that?
What's the matter, baby?
Okay, let's try again.
Well, maybe let's leave it there with the reincarnation. We can pick this up, the story, the reincarnation Maybe that's something we can talk about next Samana.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can
Sounds good.
segue into that. Yeah, it's been a great chat. Really enjoyed it today.
Yes. Good.
Yeah.
And looking forward to breaking bread with you again next Samana. Give thanks for your support and your love and your patronage wherever you are in the world. Your energy and your attention, all of it adds to what we're building. Stay plugged in if this resonates with you. And we're looking forward to meeting you all and co-creating and building the nation,
Yes.
the future.
Give thanks.
Give
And if you haven't already, you can follow us on Patreon. And if you're not able to do that, then sharing is for free. Sharing is caring. Send it to your family and friends who resonate. And let's get this information out there. Much love, man.